And if you feel curious about something and you stop and go, well, but that has nothing to do with my job or my life, really, like I don't have any business pulling on that thread, pull on that thread.
Have I ever told you about that game that I love to play when I'm doing workshops on website design? It's called Homepage Bingo. And the way it goes is I basically will ask people, all right, how many people have an initial banner that is a highlight reel video of some sort? How many people have 3 profiles of alumni on their homepage? How many people have a program finder right underneath those 3 profiles? And how about those 3 news events? And how about the alumni magazine feature? And how about the student life feature? And how about that little parallax feature? And then how about that fat footer? And I've got to tell you, this is a game that everyone wins.
Well, do you ever feel personally responsible for having like a hand in creating what has now become your homepage bingo? Because I don't know, sounds like we could have had this conversation in the M. Stoner Ravenswood office back in 2013 and it would have been the same thing.
You know, I've got to tell you, when we were having in the interview, I was thinking to myself, am I guilty? Am I at fault? Was this my doing?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to accept that you're part of the problem.
Indeed. Or at least, you know, what I would like to believe is that we set the trend before it became a mindless routine.
Fair. That's fair. Maybe you were the first to put together the hero image with the 3 profiles, with the program finder, and it was such a good idea. Everyone else just copied it.
And I will say that the first website that I launched, which was Base College more than 25 years ago, the navigation looked very much like about admissions, academics, student life, athletics. Yeah.
All right.
But that was 25 years ago.
Okay, for the record. Well, our guest today is part of the solution. So luckily, we have the pleasure of interviewing Tracy Halvorsen. She is now the CEO and president of Digital at Adeo, where she guides higher education and mission-driven organizations through brand and web transformations. But you know what? She's been doing this for decades. She is truly an icon in this space. She co-founded and led FastSpot, one of the top agencies for nearly 20 years. And she worked with really high impact institutions like Yale and Brown. And my gosh, I remember the day the Bucknell University website dropped because it rocked our higher ed world. And so Tracy's accumulated, I mean, the accolades do just speak for themselves, like more than 25 Webby awards along the way. Like you don't get that by not being curious, by not being creative, right? And so she is truly an icon, and we are very lucky to have her as our second episode guest. Let's get into the conversation with Tracy.
Let's do it.
Tracy, it is so great to see you. Thank you for joining us today for this conversation. Now, let's just get right into it. You came to the web as a painter, BFA and MFA from, oh my gosh, is it MICA, M-I-C-A?
Maryland Institute College of Art for my master's, Cleveland Institute of Art for my BFA.
There it is. So you weren't trained as a developer or a marketer. You're an artist, and like the internet is your new canvas, right? So how did your origin story shape the way that you think about design differently than someone who like maybe came up through a more traditional agency track?
What painting really taught me that I apply to my life now is an element of bravery, because you're constantly facing a blank page, a blank canvas. And, you know, it's really only in hindsight that I kind of realized, oh, that's a muscle I've been training for a long time. And I think that kind of bravery also allowed me to, when I heard about the internet and heard about, you know, Photoshop and scanners and digital photography and all these things that were that were coming out right as I was just out of undergrad. I I wasn't scared to dive in and figure it out. So I think there's that element of I welcome discovery. I welcome figuring things out. I'm always curious, and I'm not intimidated by tools or technology or anything. I'm just sort of I let my curiosity pull me, and my bravery lets me dive in instead of immediately kind of going to the fear place. So I think that is the ingredient, the ingredients, curiosity and bravery, that allowed me to see this new space for exploration around a different kind of experience that is still a very creative experience. And the fact that I could now create experiences for people anywhere in the world that could interact, that could contribute. It becomes collaborative. It's not a static experience. The whole nature of it was just fascinating to me. So that I became obsessed immediately, and it never stopped.
That is so awesome. And I've got to say, as you're talking about bravery and curiosity, it almost answers one of the burning questions in my mind. And I have to confess right now, Tracy, I've been wanting to talk with you forever. And I mean, I was at M Stoner when you were at Fastbot, and every time Fastbot would roll out a new website, we were like all clustered by the big monitor, looking at it and just being envious, and in some cases being like, oh my God, she went there? She did that?
And the Slack started popping off, Tracy. It would be like guaranteed every time.
It was incredible just watching the amount of freshness and new thinking that you brought to every single website that we saw. And I have been wanting to ask you for 2 decades now how you managed to do that in an industry, particularly like higher ed, where there's a pattern that everyone follows, right? There's the navigation, the hero image, the 3 profiles, the news stories, the teaser for the alumni magazine, the visit, and then the fat footer. So how do you continually manage to bring inspiration and originality to the designs that you do?
Well, I think it's always been intentional. That's the way that I wanted to work, and that's the way that I wanted to make sure my teams always worked. The formulas never hold the answers. Yeah. And, I think with higher ed in particular, we were very fortunate to have a lot of clients that came to us who were purposefully looking to not stick within the mold. I think the first Bucknell site that we did, we were an underdog going into that bid, relatively unknown in that space, and even just as an agency. And when we got it, it was in part because we really had this alignment with Pete Mackey, who was there at the time, and his team, and Roberta Deal. And so there was a willingness inside to think differently, to not just do what's expected and put out another higher ed website. And so that's I'm always looking for that challenge, because I think that that's where the really good stuff lives. But in terms of coming from an artist perspective too, there was a time in my career as a early artist where I was literally living the starving artist lifestyle, which is fine to do in your 20s. But I remember that, so I had a gallery that was showing some of my work down in Florida. It was my roommate's aunt. So, had this gallery. I would send paintings down, and every now and then she'd sell one. And that would be like 3 months of income for me. And, I was living in a warehouse. I was working at a restaurant, and painting every free moment I had. And one day she called and she said, "Remember that painting we sold last month? It was a big painting. It was a big sale." And I was like, "Yeah, that was great." She said, "Well, a woman came in. She really loves your work, and she really loved that painting, and now it's sold. So she wanted to know if you can do another one very similar to that." And I immediately, I mean, I wanted the sale, of course. So I was in a situation where, and I needed the sale, but I reacted to that very viscerally, and I've unpacked that moment, many times. But what it felt like is what I was, if I agreed to do that, I was moving into a different lane, more as a craftsperson than a creative, than an artist. And so I said that I couldn't, but, I'd love if she, saw something new that she liked, but I couldn't commit to doing something that was being prescribed. Yeah. So I think that it comes by, I come by it naturally from that perspective. And when it came to work, it was, when I started working in the web, it was brand new. There were no conventions. There was no, this is how you do it. And that was what was so fun about it. And so, then we go through a few generations of websites. It's not like this Brave New World. And then the conventions have locked in, and you see the sameness and the templates and the blanding was well in place early on with higher eds. And it stemmed out of, I think, an institutional or a industry-wide problem. And I don't think that's unique to higher ed, but I think higher ed is a very good example of it, where you've got so many different audiences, and you are working with generally a stakeholder group that usually includes a lot of legacy mindset people. It might be trustees or the president or people that are really inside the bubble and have a very static, not fluid understanding of the language they use to describe the institution. So even just from a core brand perspective, I think higher eds have always struggled with, we don't want to be too differentiated, too specific, because that, while putting us squarely in line with the people who we do want to connect with, that might alienate all the other people who maybe we want to be connected with too. Or, well, if we say this to students, well, what will the parents think when they read it? Or what will the alumni think? And so I think it was a convergence of outside forces and inside pressures that forced that to be. And, my impression is that that's not doing anybody any good. That's coming from a place of fear and trying to be all things to all people. So, back to the fear place, I do think that's a underlying element to all of that sameness. When I was leading teams, when I'm leading teams today at Adeo, I'm working with creatives, right? And that applies to everybody: developers, strategists, project managers. Everyone that I work with is coming to everything they do from a creative perspective. And so that means, like, you are always looking for what's new. How can we innovate? What might be over that mountain? What might happen if we reimagine a navigation? Or if we stop every time we feel like, oh, well, I've got to do this way, let's stop for a minute and ask why. I love the 5 whys approach to anything that you stop and wonder about it. Yeah, well, and also why would we make a change? Maybe we don't need to make a change. So I just think the problem-solving questions that are inherent in the work, the nature of working with creatives, and not wanting people to fall into stagnation, because that kills the culture, it kills the work, and I think, for organizations, it kills their brand if they fall into it. I think all of those reasons are why the work was always trying to break new ground or do new unique things, but always on behalf of what was true for the client too.
Yeah. You had mentioned to me a little earlier on the idea that you also invested heavily in R&D.
Yes.
And I'd love to pull on that thread for a little. What do you mean about that? What did that look like?
Well, you can't rely on just your clients to give you all the fun stuff, right? And as a creative, I knew the risks we would run if we didn't have a decent amount of challenging, innovative things to work on. And so I purposely tried to carve out time for the team to work on our own projects, our own ideas. So we would get together and, everyone would kind of pitch an idea. We'd pick one and take it and run with it. So that's what we developed an iPad game called Jambalaya right when the iPad was coming out. It was this cool, word scramble game. We created a couple different apps, and one of the big ones that turned into something was a CMS. So, we started developing a CMS really out of a client request back in 2004 or something, and just kind of kept iterating on it. And those kinds of projects, I just think, keep people fresh, and sometimes it yields something that's useful, like a product or an outcome, but other times it's really just to keep those muscles working.
That is so cool. And I've got to ask one last thing about what you were just saying. The woman who wanted you to recreate that painting, did she end up with a Tracy Halvorsen painting at any point?
Yeah, she did.
She did.
And did it look the same as the one you created before? Of course.
No, I would say it was better than the one I created before.
Of course it was. Tracy, the Jambalaya game, ahead of its time. Don't you see that in the New York Times list of games right now? I want to open my New York Times app and play Jambalaya after I play Strands, for the record.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated by this idea that things, when you have an idea and you don't kind of act on it, or you act on it and maybe it is too soon. There's a time when I think an idea is meant for a certain time. And I think that idea is floating around, and it's like people are always like, oh, they stole my idea. Well, no, they just took action on it and the time was right. You didn't. And so it moved on to the next person, because the universe is presenting the conditions for this idea to be a really good idea at that time. So, I think about that too, as when you're working with creative people, I want everyone to be empowered to grab some of those ideas and not feel like, oh, we have to do what the client's telling us to do, and just make room for those things to come in, because I think that's the only way.
What is standing out to me in this conversation is how you are fostering this culture of creativity within the organizations that you are a part of. And that is so interesting when you look at every single role, even ones that maybe aren't traditionally considered creative roles. It strikes me that you are clearly hiring for curiosity. And I want to know, as somebody who hires people, how do you do that? Is there a magic question that you're asking? Is there, how are you judging in the hiring process if somebody is curious?
That's a great question, and I hope everyone who hears this, who is curious, realizes that's a superpower. But you need to show it off, right? And I think there are a lot of people that are looking to hire curious people, especially right now, and that because of AI, right?
Yes.
So I think we need a lot of curiosity. I mean, I ask people in interviews, where's your guilty pleasure, right? What are you currently obsessed with? And these things can have nothing to do with work. I just want to know a little bit about them. And then I ask them, what's something that you are exploring right now that, has nothing to do with work, but you're just really curious about it. And if they don't have 10 answers for that, then it's oh, you're not a curious person. I remember interviewing a young woman maybe 2 years ago, and when I asked her, I all right, well, who do you follow? Whose work are you really into? What blogs do you read? How do you stay up on things? What are you curious about? What do you think is going to change in the next year? And she was like, oh, yeah, I don't really have an answer for any of those. I guess that's not good. And I was like, yeah, that's not good. I mean, maybe that helped her change her life, but I also think that, like, I'm not saying that because I want I want more revenue for my company, and so this is the kind of person I'm trying to bring in to optimize for business. Curiosity to me is also, it's a big part of creativity, and creativity is a natural it's a natural trait that we all have. And I was just reading Martha Beck's book about anxiety, and how she's when you have anxiety, it really does, like, cut off creativity. Just even in the brain science of it, they've proven it and studied it. But what she found and teased out and studied is that the opposite is true as well. So if you are engaging in creativity, you silence the anxiety. So it's a really interesting duality there that I loved reading about it now, and it's just like, oh, okay, yeah. There's a aspect to all of this that's just about, like, living a good life.
I love
So
that.
Tracy, you just brought AI up. Let's talk about what the role of the institution's website is now in 2026 and beyond. Certainly, there is one school of thought that I think is pretty far on one end of the spectrum and is saying, well, the website's just going to be plumbing now, right? It's just going to be a data source for AI. There's people on the very far other end of that spectrum who are probably, like, burying their head in the sand. And then I think there's the rest of us in the middle who are cautiously optimistic about what AI is going to bring to website traffic and helping people find information faster. But what's the future look like for websites? And I would love, you've mentioned blanding. Let's also let's talk about that a little bit too.
I think this question applies to everything web related, right? But with higher ed, yeah, it's a real conundrum, because they've already been trying to deal with all these different channels, and, like, oh, now I got to worry about not just the website, but and it was like mobile, when mobile came out. Oh, and now we need to worry about responsive, and then social media. Now we got to worry about all these different channels, and then we got to be creating content for all these different audiences. And now you've got AI saying, don't worry about how any of that looks. Just develop the plumbing the way that we want it, so that you show up in the AI searches. And I don't think that's the case. I do think that what AI is doing is it's going to force the schools to be more specific, to actually answer questions that their audiences have. And I think it's going to force them to change their content strategy for the better. I don't think that means they shouldn't also have a website presence that communicates who they are and what they feel like, to the best of their abilities, because I think that the website is the place, right? Until you can be physically there, the website is that place that you go to try to feel like, what's this place feel like? So I still think that it's very important in terms of the emotional engagement, the design, the user experience, all of those things. But you have to be aware of how AI is reading your content, is attracted to your content, validates your content, prioritizes it, whatever it might be. And that's partly in how you construct it and write it, but also what other people are saying about you. And, so maybe it's going to force them to look outside the bubble a little bit and pay a little more attention to what's happening to their brand outside of their own walls. But no, I don't think that AI is yet at the place where it's, I I joke that sometimes I feel like it's this big black hole that's sucking everything in, right? And so I'm like, well, what happens when we all get sucked into the black hole? Like, do we end up in the simulation? Like, what's happening? But that's for another podcast. So I think it's reshaping everything, and so I think you have to really pay attention to it. But I think the forces right now can be used for good, and certainly don't mean like throw out your website and turn it into a wiki or something like that. Although that would be interesting.
So talk to us about blanding.
Oh yeah, blanding. Well, I mean, we all know what that means from spending so much time in higher ed and in branding. I've always just kind of poked at it. We're always out here yelling like differentiate and what makes a good brand and what is great brand design and strategy and all those things. But thanks to AI, I was sort of like, I wonder if I can turn this into a kind of like a tool so that people can see it for themselves. Like maybe I can create like an audit mechanism that runs through my filters, runs through the AI filters, and looks at things in a way where it can provide helpful information to the internal teams who are probably feeling the same way, but can't get any momentum around this because it's words, right? We all know that no matter, even this is so ironic to me, academic institutions will leave their content to the last thing that they worry about. Right? Why is that? Why is that the last thing? Or they'll move it, they'll migrate the same content from site to site and never change it and never look at it and never really think about the messaging, the organization, the content strategy, all of those things. So blanding was something I was just able to do because of AI and because of AI and Claude Cowork. And I'm surprised, right? Because my test data that I was using was like 20 different EDUs, and I shared it on LinkedIn, and that was a couple weeks ago, and now I think it's up to over 660 schools that people have entered and audited. I don't know that it's all been from those schools or people that are checking their competitors and their own school, but I've received a number of messages just saying exactly what I hoped I would hear, which is that we are going to use this scorecard, we're going to use these results to show the higher ups, like, look, it's not just us saying it, and it's not a vendor trying to sell us, an optimization package or something. It's literally, and look, we can see how we score against all these other places, and they're using that to try to get some traction to deal with this problem, because I think it's a big problem.
Tracy, as we're starting to wrap up this conversation, we saw that you gave a keynote called Designers Should Run the World. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to know what that world looks like. If a designer did run a university's marketing operation, like maybe what's the first thing that they'd change?
I don't know what the first thing they would change is. Probably the siloing within the organization. Mm-hmm. Because I think designers are, creatives, and another title for that talk was Creatives Should Run the World. So I kind of lump them together. But I think, designers are solving problems. That's what I love about design. It's looking at something and going, can this be better? It looks at a problem and goes, how do I solve this with design thinking? So it's a different lens in how you're looking at problems and how you're trying to solve them. And I think that it's also a mindset that appreciates collaboration and bravery and honesty. and vulnerability and all of those things. So I think that if a designer were running a university's marketing communications department, they would probably tackle anything that was creating barriers around those lines, right? Like the internal collaboration, where's the fear coming from? Are we solving the right problems in the right ways? I think they'd probably make sure that everyone was looking at it from a problem first approach, not a perform this tactic, do this task. It's like, let's identify the problem every time first. So that's what I think. I think that designers are they're people who are out there trying to solve problems in new and better ways all the time. There's always ways that we can do things better. I think that's a human condition as well, is that striving for, well, what if, or what's over there, or how could we make it better? I think that's just where we all want to be in our lives. And so if as much as we can foster that in our teams and in our own lives, I think that it's just a better way to be.
It's awesome. Tracy, one last question, because
Yeah.
I'm sure our podcast listeners would want to know this, and it's inspired by what you shared a little bit ago. What are you obsessed with right now?
Too many things. That's the problem with curiosity, is you've got to watch it, or you suddenly are like, I have completely forgot to feed the dog or myself or kids. I am obsessed with AI right now. Similar to the obsession I felt about the web when it was was new and emerging. So I love anything that's got this big of an impact. But I'm obsessed with what it's empowering people to do, and how that's going to reshape things, right? Not what it's replacing that people do, what it's empowering them to do. And so I think about that a lot. I'm also pretty obsessed with creativity and what that means to a human, to a team, to an organization, to the work, and how we can foster it, how we can grow it, how we can embrace it and learn from our own creative muscles that we develop, and how we can let that impact our lives and the lives of the people that we spend it with. So those are my two sort of front and center obsessions. I'm also obsessed with, my new sketchbook that I got, some watercolors that I haven't played with yet. I've got about 20 books on my bookshelf that I've got my library right here. I don't need to go to the library. I have assembled my library. So, but also, I want to add to that, I think that a lot of people feel like they only should be curious about the thing that they do. And I would just say, no, that's absolutely, be curious about a wide range of things. And if you feel curious about something and you stop and go, well, but that has nothing to do with my job or my life, really, I don't have any business pulling on that thread. Pull on that thread. That's absolutely
Pull
the one you should
harder.
pull on. Yeah, if it makes you a little uncomfortable and you feel a little scared, lean into that. That fear is the way, right? That's where you want to be going, because in the end, that is really what differentiates us from AI, right? Is how we curate our own curiosities, our own assembly of our quilt that we make with these threads. It's very unique to every individual. And I want my quilt to be rich and diverse and full of all sorts of different colors and experiences. So you can't get that if you're just like, well, I do websites, I do brand, that's all I'm curious about. And you just have your blinders on. I think you're robbing yourself from those leaps of innovation and imagination that happen when you're able to bring new ideas in. It doesn't self-propagate.
Yeah.
It needs the outside forces. It needs a little chaos.
I think this is the mindset of an icon right here.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll take it.
And on that note, Tracy, it was so delightful chatting with you this morning. Thank you for your time. And
Thank you.
keep being an icon. We're gonna keep watching, and we are so grateful for you just continuing to raise the bar for this
Well,
whole industry.
Thank you
Absolutely.
for doing the same, and being icons yourselves, and for bringing up these conversations in the way that you are doing it. I hope that it's helpful for people, inspiring. Maybe it can help people make changes they want to make in their lives, and pull on more threads. So thank you for the great questions and for doing all that you do.
Oh, this was so wonderful. Thank you again, Tracy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my God, Mallory, my mind is buzzing with all of those ideas that Tracy shared with us. I'm like mind blown right now.
Yeah,
Absolutely
I
mind
knew
blown.
that was gonna happen, though. I mean, we know Tracy. Like, you spend 5 minutes with her, and it's like you've spent 5 days learning something new. It just is incredible.
And I wasn't kidding when I said that I have been wanting to talk with her for like decades, right? Because we've been in the industry for more than 2 decades, both of us. And I have always wanted to ask her these questions. And I've got to tell you, the hype is nowhere near as great as the actual reality of the conversation. It was absolutely incredible. I loved what she had to say about bravery and curiosity. And I also really loved the story that she shared about her being a starving artist earlier in her career, presented with the opportunity to make a lot of money by basically duplicating a painting that someone saw. And I love her reaction, the idea that she didn't want to do something that was prescribed, and she didn't want to be a craftsperson versus being an artist. And I also love the punchline. I love how that story resolved.
I mean, like, when she was telling us that story, I was like, this is the, like, origin story of Tracy Halvorsen. And, like, when she is keynoting, like, I can't imagine she won't be keynoting to 1,000 people one day, because that is, like, she has that skill set. That's the opening story of her keynote, because from it, you understand immediately how she approaches taste. And I had the, like, pleasure of interviewing Tracy and one of her colleagues on a different podcast a few months back, specifically around taste in this AI era. And a lot of those same themes actually came out in this conversation. But in that story, it tells you how she approaches her creative work. And I can now understand all the decisions Fastbot made.
Absolutely. And of course, my mind was going, what does it feel like to live without fear like that? It's just so incredible. It's so incredible to hear her creative process, her approach to creating that collaborative culture, even the idea that you have space and time to chase ideas as a team that you find really interesting, and the value system that says, don't be curious only about what your work is. Find 1,000 threads to pull on, and that feeds your creativity. And I also loved what she said about the fact that creativity silences anxiety. And I'm like, oh, does it work as well as an Ambien?
Does it replace a gummy? I don't know.
Seriously.
Okay, so I just gotta go be more creative, and then I'll be able to sleep through the night. Gotcha.
Suddenly it's all clear. Everything is illuminated.
Dr. Halvorsen, yes, my new primary care. Perfect. I love it. Oh my gosh, the thread, the whole conversation around the threads. I was like this is the title of the episode. Like, this is the cold open. Like, this is everything. This idea that you should actively be curious about things that have absolutely nothing to do with your work. And I find that personally, when as a fitness instructor, you know, like a lot of people are like, what the heck are you doing wasting your time teaching $25, you know, spin classes? And I'm like, I'm not wasting my time. I am scratching the creative itch in my brain. Music is my like first language, like, you know, so I identified with what she was saying so much. Now, I've sat in many a conference hall where I'm in a track session around something extremely like web dev technical, and I chose to go there because I was curious. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh shit, this is like very much over my head. So I think there's maybe like, we gotta pick and choose which threads we pull.
There's that, but the joy of experimenting, right? And the wonderful thing is that, actually, I know you, so you and I are wired the same way. And if we're going to explore something, if it's going to be a hobby, we're still going to go all out, and we're still going to want to be like super good at it to the point that people are like, you are a yoga instructor, right? Or you're a gymnast, right? Because you're doing this so well. But I love the freedom to simply explore it from the standpoint of it bringing you joy and teaching you new things without feeling compelled to be excellent at it, or even worse, as we tend to want to do, be the best at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's some freedom in being able to detach getting a gold star from being just simply curious about a topic. If I take anything away, it's this idea of just start pulling more threads and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I also thought when she was telling us about the questions that she asks in interviews when she's hiring, I was in my own mind, I was thinking, what is my guilty pleasure? What am I obsessed with right now? Yeah. And I'm actually really glad I had an answer, unlike the woman that she was interviewing. I felt so bad for her.
I'm like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, there's been a lot happening in pop culture recently between The Bachelorette and Secret Lives of Mormon Wives and Summer House. I wonder how Tracy would react if I was in an interview with her and I was dissecting the Amanda Sierra West situation. Like, I think I probably wouldn't get hired, but here we are.
Pop culture is still culture.
It's my entire Instagram feed. Oh my gosh. It's like, guys, I have a day job. I can't just keep paying attention to Bravo. Like,
that's hysterical. You know, we should probably do a segment on what our Instagram feed tells people about us. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, gosh, this second episode, like, we're rocking and rolling, and I am so grateful once again to On Deck Marketing for taking this chance on us. Now that we're a couple episodes in, like, we're starting to see this incredible reaction from the online community about our podcast series, and we are so grateful for everyone who has already subscribed and even rated these podcasts 5 stars, of course. Just the gratitude for John Reed and his team taking a chance on us. It's never going to stop. We're thankful.
We are very, very grateful. These conversations wouldn't be happening without On Deck's support. And if the reaction we've gotten is any sign of how important these conversations are going to be to people, how useful, then I think we've started something really awesome. And it would not have happened if On Deck didn't catch the vision as well and say, I want to be part of this. So thank you, John. Thank you, On Deck. We are looking forward to some really awesome conversations. And this one from Tracy set a really high bar.
The bar is high. Whoever our guest is for episode 3, you've got a big hurdle to jump over. But more on that, y'all, in a couple weeks. If you are still here, thank you again for listening to this episode. And don't forget, head to Apple, head to Spotify, wherever you're listening to this podcast. Give us a rating, give us a subscribe, and we'll catch you soon.
Awesome. Be iconic.
Be iconic. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Higher Ed Icons celebrates the pioneers, thought leaders, and changemakers who have shaped and continue to shape higher education marketing.
New episodes drop every other Tuesday. Subscribe and leave us a rating wherever you listen.
Higher Ed Icons is made possible by our founding sponsor, On Deck Marketing, keeping colleges and universities visible where students learn, walk, and scroll.
Learn more at ondeckmarketing.com. That's ondeckmktg.com to learn more.